directly. There are very often the case that when I come to a gathering and someone introduces me and they mention my master's degree, they won't exactly get it correct. And they'll say he has a master's in clinical psychology with a specialization in extrasensual phenomenology. To which my reaction usually is one, if only. And two, I'm not sure I want a degree in extrasensual phenomenology from a Catholic school. So I'm here to really do the impossible, and that is speak for 25 minutes. As anyone in theater, it usually takes me 25 minutes to say my name. So we have a lot of content to go through, but I'm delighted to be invited back to talk about catching up to the kids and how technology is remaking arts education. As Ken mentioned, I'm one of you, and I come in peace. And the fact of the matter is, I hope when I'm done that I've brought you some peace. Because, you know, going through school, it's a fact at this stage that evolution exists. The problem we have, though, is how exactly does this evolution occur? I mean, how does a species somehow alter so that it better adapts to the community? We know, for example, that, or we think, for example, that there's some gamma ray somewhere that's coming through and hitting a gene, which is resulting in a mutation that, by force of luck, allows one to adapt. Well, guess what? We are looking at an evolutionary circumstance with our young people. And that external variable that we are talking about is not a gamma ray, it is technology. It is basically our species furthering the evolvement of ourselves. Now, despite that evolvement, some of us have not yet evolved from hippiedom. This is not my costume for Halloween. This is my costume every day of the year. And I've always said there's no finer place for an aging hippie than a college and university campus. Although, frankly, there are changes going on in that environment that get me a little nervous. This is a picture of Don at the tomb of Jim Morrison in Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris. That was very important for me because I was at the concert at Dinner Key Auditorium when Jim Morrison exposed himself. Now, I have to admit something. I was in the front row of that concert, and I did not see anything. It might be because he came on stage with a little lamb wrapped around his shoulders. And I was fascinated by that. And the next thing I knew, the police were coming and escorting him off the stage. And all I could think at that age was, I guess it's illegal to come on stage with a little lamb. Little did I realize it was the pork loin that was getting him in trouble. How many of you have ever heard of The Last Lecture? Randy Pausch, which to this day is like the greatest story ever told of a professor who was delivering a last lecture when he was told the day before that he was dying of pancreatic cancer. Randy and I were partners, business partners. Remember, I'm from the theater. We were business partners. And there was the coming together of this drama guy and this computer science guy that led to the creation of the Entertainment Technology Center back in 1998. Now, I have to admit something to you. At that time, people were approaching us going, my goodness, such a visionary approach. And Randy and I would chuckle because there wasn't anything visionary about it at all. It was a completely reactionary movement. Reacting to what? Reacting to the reality of young people who had already moved on and left the traditional world in the background. And very much our coming together was a reflection of this ridiculous notion that human beings are either right brain or left brain thinkers. That's like saying because we know where a software resides in a hard drive, that defines the hard drive, or defines the OS, the operating system. Nothing could be further from the truth. And one of the coolest things about the evolution of young people today is they don't really buy this. Even the geeks realize that there is artistry in what they do. And so I want to talk to you about these young people that we saw on stage, and probably more important, the young ones who are not on stage, and the young ones that you are trying to get into your organizations. Because it really, at this stage, doesn't matter what their socioeconomic bracket is, because they are, for the most part, 21st century digital natives. And as far as I'm concerned, they represent a new species. And maybe it's the aging hippie in me, but I'm really optimistic about them. And believe truly that if we can get out of the way, wonderful things will occur. So who are these people? These people are, for the most part, your children. In some instances, they are your grandchildren. But we must examine them more closely, because what we're going to do today, or over the next few days, is juxtapose this. In the same way that you are arts educators, don't miss out on the opportunity to have these young people educate you on the artistry of their life, which is a 24/7, 365 life. So, what changed everything? What changed everything was technology-enabled interactivity. You know, I tell people when my parents were growing up, they would listen to radio. That was the social event. They would all gather around the living room, mom, grandpa, 3 generations, and they would listen to radio. Radio is a linear storytelling medium. It is linear. When I was a kid, my mother would sit me down in front of the television because she said that's the only time I would shut up. And really, what is television? Television is radio with pictures. Once the dynamic of interactivity enters the lexicon and the life, and we define interactivity according to Janet Murray and her seminal work, Hamlet on the Holodeck, as enabling what? Immersion. Immersion basically means the democratization of acting. You see, I became an actor when I was a kid because this was my virtual world. This is the world that allowed me to be someone else. We now have, through technology, the ability for anyone to immerse themselves in an imaginary world. And we're usually immersing ourselves in an imaginary world because that imaginary world is better than the world we inhabit. What's the second component? Agency. Agency is a CS term. What does it mean? Empowerment. When you take a look at our social institutions, we're still saying what? Remember to vote. And yet, as they vote, seldom do things seem to change. In a video game, guess what? When you make a decision, the world responds to you. No wonder they're addicted to it. Because amidst all the noise of society, they feel no one cares. No one is interested. So what do they turn to? They turn to a technology that does respond to them. They're navigable worlds. In other words, you can fly through your computer. You can journey through your computer. It has added a new dimensionality to their world. And lastly, something that all of us wish we could do, hit the reset button. That's what interactive digital media allows. It allows for incredible experimentation and the ability to do something we can't do in life, and that is, let me try this again. Let me do this again. It's one of the other reasons I love the theater. It was called rehearsal. If you're an actor, there was no greater frustration than the day before the show closes, you finally got the line. You're like, oh, that's what that means. Can we redo this 3-month run so I can get it right this time? These are all the aspects of interactivity that our young people are familiar with. How do we take advantage of them? Okay, why are they different? First of all, generational change has moved way beyond the Bible. The Bible says it's every 20 years. It's about every 20 months. And you know that for a fact because of your cell phone, because of your software updates. I mean, how many of you are like embarrassed at your cell phone? Because it's like the older version. We even see the advertisement now of the petty thief trying to steal a guy's cell phone, and then he looks at it and he's like, I'm not taking that. No self-respecting thief would be seen with a phone like that. So we're completely familiar with that. The world is changing so quickly, we have run out of the alphabet. We've already gone through Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z. I mean, the only thing left is what? Generation AA? Like they're a bunch of batteries? No, the fact of the matter is, you know what sociologists are calling this new generation? The plurals. The plurals, because of all the things we're going to be talking about. They are, we just saw in front of us, they are the most multi-ethnic and multicultural society we've ever had. Now you could say, well, what about the early turn of the century, Ellis Island? Where did all those immigrants go? They went to their ghettos, right? They went to their ghettos. We are seeing an assimilation among young people. I'm an Italian-American from Brooklyn who moved to Miami right before the Cuban Missile Crisis resulted in all this influx of Cubans. And the issue back then was, why don't they assimilate? And I always realized, you know what? We're jealous of them. We Italian Americans were jealous because they maintained their culture. They knew they were living, they wanted to maintain that culture at home and that culture in the Western world, in the American world. Whereas my parents kept telling me, you're an American. You're an American. I said, the only people who don't know I'm an American are the Americans. They all look at me as what I look like, an Italian. What do we mean by this? The USA will become a plurality nation within 50 years. In other words, we're going to start looking like the European Parliament. Minority children will be a majority in 2020. Hispanic and Asian populations will double by 2040. And we see the transformation is already underway. You know how you know it's underway? It's called food. When I was growing up, you know what exotic meant? We went to a northern Italian restaurant. That was exotic. It was like, where's the tomatoes? These people use tomatoes. This isn't food. Now, I used to sit in the Entertainment Technology Center and just be bombarded with smells. I mean, think about how food, nutrition, nourishment has affected us. And sometimes it really doesn't. I was in Mumbai, and there I am in India. I'm at an Indian restaurant, and I'm ordering food like I know what I'm doing. And the waiter says to me, how hot do you want this? And I said, well, I want you to know that in the US, when I go to an Indian restaurant, I usually get about a 7 or an 8. And he goes, oh, give him a 1. I was on fire, totally on fire. They have, let's face it, folks, an altered perception of time and space. Their version of time doesn't adhere to our version of time. And as an Italian, that's kind of easy for me. I remember being on an Italian cruise ship and the toilet wasn't working. And I went to the purser's office and I said, il gabinetto nella mia cabina non funziona. Right? The toilet in my room is not working. And he looked at me and went, funziona domani. It'll work tomorrow. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do, hold it? Their version of time and ours is different. They live in a non-linear world. Why do you think online education is booming? Why do you think all of that is occurring where it is at the ease of the individual? How many of you are working mothers or juggling so many different jobs that you realize there's a lot to be said about this new perception of time? Because flexibility equals agency. I'm currently in the process of putting all of my courses online. Multiple realities of our world today are accepted as normal dimensions of existence. And in a video game, you're talking about, is this a persistent world? In other words, is this a world that goes on even when I'm not there, like the real world? Or is this a universe that will freeze when I'm not participating in it? This is the mindset that we're dealing with young people. They are technophiles. What do we mean by that? Technology is their friend because it is a procedural medium that facilitates participation. If we as artists have a leg up on anything, it's the fact that we invite participation as well. Do we do it as willingly and as openly and frankly as less critically as technology does? Do we recognize that we live in a multi-sensorial universe? I don't know about you, but I don't have a problem with the kid walking down the sidewalk with headphones in his ear because he's got a soundtrack to his life. And guess what? I've got a soundtrack to my life. It is still the case when I go visit my sister in Miami, I put in the Miami Vice DVD. I'm like Don Marinelli. I don't even wear socks when I go down there anymore. I mean, I'm so stuck in the time warp. The 21st century digital native has grown up with technology being as much a part of who they are as anything, as another limb. And in fact, if you want to get spiritual, take a look at what technology has done. It has emulated what I call the deistic properties, the godlike properties. What do we mean? Almost every religion ascribes to the almighty omniscience, all-knowing. That's called Wikipedia. You got a question, just type it in, and son of a gun, an answer pops up. And that changes your being. I used to like driving with my wife. We'd pass an exit, I wouldn't know what it was, and we'd go on a riff. Be like, I wonder what that means. Now it's like, I'll find out. It like kills the imagination, but I know it. Omnipresence, the deity is all around us. That's called Wi-Fi. That's called Wi-Fi. I do a lot of work in Korea. The entire country is wired. You want to get in touch with the world, you can do that. And both of this leads to a feeling of omnipotence, which we're going to talk about later. They believe in technology as portals. This is very important. What is a portal? It's a gateway to another world. And so, to what degree are you using technology as a portal into your world? When I take my students to an art museum, they look at a painting, you know what they want to do? They want to go in the painting. It's like, that's really cool. What's it like behind that? And that's what leads to the incredible imagination that we see when you give them technology. Digital media, I mentioned navigation. It is a three-dimensional experience. If you think they're just looking at a screen, you don't get it. They're looking at a portal to another world. The navigation that can occur. And all of this leads to what? A comprehension of structure. Everything has structure. Music has structure. When Newton was analyzing the composition of light, he compared it to musical scales and notation. How did we get away with that? We know for a fact that Einstein said if it wasn't for music, he couldn't have been as smart as he was. How did we get away from that? And the other thing you have to realize is that 21st century digital natives are a generation of storytellers. All that reality TV we disdain is really about telling stories. What do you think YouTube is about? What do you think Facebook is about? What do you think Twitter is about? Capturing moments in time. What is a story? It is a compression and a manipulation of human experience for the purpose of conveying a meaning of some sort. They get that. Now you're talking about a generation where as children, they've grown up with massively multiplayer online role-playing games. Disney's Toontown Online was supplanted by PixieHollow.com. PixieHollow.com, when it opened, had 5 million fairies generated by its users within the first month. This is mind-boggling. Who wouldn't want to tap into that energy, tap into that enthusiasm? And then one place where we have issues, folks, is there needs to be a tangible evolution of museums and traditional institutions. You know how many young people view a museum as a place where you go to look at dead things? You can't have that. I mean, I've gotten to the age now that when I go to a museum, I can't read the writing on the 3x5 card. And yet I know for a fact that through my phone, I can use augmented reality to bring those exhibits to life. So we need to reinvent the traditional museum. We're looking at a generation that concedes there seems to be tremendous difficulty in getting the world that their parents created to function properly. As an aging hippie, I feel we've let them down. You can't teach economics and say a $16 trillion debt is cool. It just doesn't work. And as a professor, I can tell you, it is about time for colleges and universities, part of the traditional institutions, to come under the microscope. I'll tell you right now, I don't think there's any greater waste of money, time, and talent than the university system of this country. Why they aren't immediately paired up with you, I do not get. I do not understand. Except I think it has something to do with lawyers. Don't get me started on that. Has any profession tanked in integrity more than that? I don't mention politicians because they never had integrity. Continue. They have a tremendous ability, these young people, to experience multiple points of view. That's a gift. That is an absolute gift. POV in a video game means everything from how do I look in the eyes of another, which is exactly Jean-Paul Sartre's definition of hell. Hell is another person. Why? Because no matter how much I may think I know you, I really don't know. I've been married 31 years. I have no idea what is going on in that head. And those pregnant pauses when I say something, I'm like, you know, it's like the old adage, if a man speaks in the forest and there's no woman there to hear him, is he still wrong? So, we're talking about the ability to immerse yourself in another character, in another world. Again, when I went over from drama to computer science, and I have to tell you, that was scary. That was the mid-90s. I mean, and the reason I did it was very simple. The students who were auditioning for me, I had the feeling, are you really interested in theater? I finally said to one group, okay, it's Friday night, money is no object. How many of you on your own volition will go see live theater? And maybe 30% of the hands went up. 30% of the hands of young people auditioning for Carnegie Mellon Drama, the oldest school of drama in America. And I thought, whoa. I said, well, how many of you would go see cinema? Half the hands went up. I said, how many of you would prefer to order 2 supreme pizzas, get a case of beer, and sit at home playing video games? And practically every hand went up. And I went back to the School of Drama and said, you can view this as either a tremendous challenge to our art form or a tremendous opportunity. You know what their reaction was? Back! Back, you evil one! And I thought, you know what? If anybody's going to try to figure out why is this interactive digital media more interesting than what we're doing on stage, I guess it's going to be me. And I did something unheard of. I walked across the campus and knocked on the door of the School of Computer Science. Now I have to tell you, the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon is one of the ugliest buildings ever created. I mean, it's like the Führer bunker. Except it is so ugly, even the Führer would not be caught dead in this thing. I mean, I walked into a building where the young people had not been outside in so long that their skin had become translucent. And there I am as a drama professor saying, is there any room in your sandbox for me? I mean, I expected to be laughed out of the building. Worse yet, I expected to be given a math test. So imagine my surprise when the response was, Don, we would be delighted to have you join us. We would be honored to have you here. You bring a whole mindset that we don't have that could augment what we're doing here. And not only that, we may finally start having cool parties. And I went over there, and you know what? I felt right at home. because they are a post-literate, experientially focused generation. What's cool about what we do? It's experience. They want to experience things. We need to help them experience things. I have young people applying to my program who have saved the earth from alien invasions many times, but they've never been in the woods. You got to get them out in the woods. We would do that. In fact, what's the first thing we would have our students do? Whitewater rafting. Why? Because if you don't work as a team, you're screwed. Not only, but even more important, there's something about signing a death waiver form that definitely gets your attention. It worked until the last year there, and I had a young man from mainland China who protested. And he said, "You cannot make me go whitewater rafting." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "In China, there's a one child per family. If I die, my family lose DNA." And I thought, son of a gun, you got something there. But, the water is really cold. So if we get the body in enough time, I should be able to get a DNA sample to send back to China. This poor kid looked at me and then I finally said, "Get in the raft!" They love applied knowledge. Most of us are giving them applied knowledge. They love role-playing. Guess what? That's what we're offering them. We've got all the tools there that they are currently searching technology to find. How do we connect it? And the other thing about them is they understand the marketplace, this world of apps. We can approach them through that as well. I mean, what is the cool thing now? We're back in the garage. We went from the garage of making apps and software to the big conglomerates, and now what's happening? A devolution that is empowering the young person again to make his or her own game. They're very frugal. Why do you think they're moving home? Why should I pay additional rent? I just went to college, got a degree for a career that's no longer there. You bet your butt I'm coming home. The other great thing is they are the most optimistic society. If you can imagine it, why can't you do it? And that's what I love about them. The students that I have seen over 30, almost 40 years in higher ed have been students that say, why not? Why can't we do this? And it's still there. In fact, that fire is still burning with them. And it's burning in areas now about clean energy, sustainability, universal communication, 3D printing. If you're in any sort of art form that can use 3D printing, get it. It's going to be completely revolutionary. And in fact, in the future, you're going to download blueprints to build a product in your own living room. I mean, I'm very psyched on 3D printing. Medical advances, the building next to mine they're growing livers, they're growing organs. Regenerative medicine is an incredible opportunity for us to show the positive aspect of technology. And all of this leads to what? The potential for immortality in a hard drive. Immortality is there, it's called music. Immortality is there, it's called the word on the page. But we're now able to capture it in a way that I know I will be able to talk to my great-great-great-grandchildren who I will never see because of technology. And that gives me a responsibility that I take very seriously. And all of that is there. All of that is at your beck and call. What you need to do is something you don't really want to do, and that is ask for help. Ask for help from who? From the children. The day of the omniscient professor is gone. Is totally gone. And these young people are so bright, education needs to become the partnership, a partnership that it has not been in hundreds of years. They will teach you more than you will teach them. I used to tell my students, I have reached that point where I can stand up in front of you and say, you know more about technology than I do. I just happen to know more about everything else. So you teach me what's the latest cool technology and how it empowers you, and I'll teach you how to stay out of jail. Deal? Deal. Thank you very much.
So much. Let's have a seat. We want to take some questions. I know Don's given us a lot to think about. And I'll also just remind folks that during lunch, about a half an hour after the end of this session, Don's going to be in a room. I can't remember which one, but it's on your iPhone.
I believe it's the International Bowl.
One of them. It's going to be up there somewhere. And that'll be give you an opportunity to kind of dive deeper.
It'll be a group growth.
Right. So Don, one of the things you touched on was this changing relationship between teacher and student, and how now with the really world of information at students' fingertips, that might transform the relationship between a teacher and a student in a studio or in a classroom. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
The easiest way to get them involved in that is to start by cataloging. In other words, they know how to take pictures. They know how to take videos. Most of you don't. And so the partnership is right there. And in fact, since technology is a procedural medium, and most of our art forms are procedural, it's a perfect alignment in terms of using technology to demonstrate everything from the polyphony of a symphony to the color composition of a painting. It's there. It's begging for us to bring them together. So that would be one way of starting it. Let alone, you realize there's like 1 billion apps? You realize there are websites just to handle cataloging apps? And those apps are being created by, for the most part, young people who see a need in this particular area, this field, this discipline, for what they are creating. That's called research, and find this stuff, share it. It's basically the new book. It's the new form of book. Use that.
You also mentioned, Don and I had a chance to talk, obviously before today. We were talking a little bit about libraries. These spaces where one had to be very quiet, they were filled with books. And the need for that may have changed now. And I know some of the work that you've been doing has been transforming school libraries into media centers, and we'll do a session on that later this afternoon with folks from the MacArthur Foundation. Can you talk a little bit about
Absolutely, because most libraries, in terms of as they're viewed from a student, is a collection of don'ts. You cannot speak, you cannot bring food in here, you cannot bring this, you cannot bring that. And guess what? There's a natural rebellion against that cannot. I mean, the great example is when Randy and I put the Entertainment Technology Center together, we said, when you win the Super Bowl, what do you get to do? You get to go to Disney World. When you've been really good at home and all that, and we want to reward the kids, what do? We take them to Disney World. And I'm like, well, why the hell can't I live at Disney World? Or nothing would boggle my mind more than going past the Carnegie Institute, Andrew Carnegie's museum complex, and there would be the yellow buses. So it's like once a year, at best once a semester, we're going to let the children come in, see where the cool stuff is, and then we're going to send them back to a place that looks like a hospital. Or worse yet, looks like a morgue. And I'm like, let's create a place where they don't want to go home. And what did that involve? Colored paint. In fact, I was recently giving a talk someplace and they said, we went to see Don and we're talking about technology and all that and changing curriculum and education. And the first thing he said to us was, are you able to paint your walls? And we realized that, well, no, we don't have permission to paint the walls. And Don's reaction was, let me get this straight. You can't even paint the freaking walls of your facility, but you're going to change the curriculum. No, you're not. And then I did something which frankly, to this day, really upset people. I bought art. I bought art and put it on the wall. If you ever want to find the hypocrisy of higher education administrators, buy art. Especially if they have an art program in their school. You can buy any technology you want. You can buy the super X-ray spectrometer that'll be used once. And the great thing about computers is, by the way, in 2 years they're all out of date. I don't know why, but they're all out of date. But if you go and buy some art, you are called up in front of the provost. It's like, why are you throwing money away? And I'm like, throwing money away? You're charging kids $200,000 for 4 years to learn how to be an artist. I buy art, I get in trouble. There's something wrong here. Sometimes it pays to be from Brooklyn. And so put art up. Let them decorate. Let them talk. Let them have a coffee. If you're really advanced, let them have a panini.
I know we have some questions from the audience, so Heather,
hungry.
if we can take some now. Okay, we have a diverse set of questions from the audience. So
Do the colors mean different things?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think they align with our brand.
Start with the purple.
Start with the purple. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, this says, we are a small nonprofit and we are passionate about technology and the arts. However, we are intimidated by the potential cost of computers, software, etc. What options exist? What opportunities are out there to affordably outfit our organization with technology?
It's called the phone. You know, when I was growing up, it used to be sort of the joke that you could be very poor, but you'd always have a nice car. It's like now the phone, the cell phone has become the leveler, There are so many potential apps in your art form. I don't even know what your art form is. Use them. Every phone has got a camera. So every phone's a video, motion picture thing. It's there. The other thing is, there's free software. You know, when Randy did the last lecture, and he said what he wanted to be remembered the most for was not the Entertainment Technology Center, because, and he even said it, Don did most of the work on that. He wanted to be remembered for Alice. Alice. And I remember yelling at him going, let me get this straight. You want to be remembered for a software? I mean, really? And he goes, yeah. Because Alice was designed to empower and show young people why they should learn programming. It was designed for middle school girls. It's free. It's free. And what did it do? It showed the purpose behind learning software, which was to do what? To animate. Animate comes from the Latin root animus, which means what? Spirit. Why are animals called animal? Because they're organic matter that have spirit in them. And so for Randy, he managed to get Electronic Arts to donate the Sims library to Alice, and now girls can see, well, by using drag and drop, I'm putting together an algorithm which is now bringing to life this avatar figure. Wow, this is worth studying. That's a hell of a lot better than, I'm taking computer science 101. Continue.
All right, this is a question I think it's on a lot of our minds, and it has to do, I think, well, I'm not going to answer, I'm going to ask you. How can we connect the divide between the immediate gratification that comes with technology and the time it takes to learn an art form? For example, learning to play an instrument, learning to dance ballet. And I've heard you talk before about craft.
Let's do something, let's use as an analogy something that they're very familiar with. A video game. Video games come with levels. All right? The levels of a video game are analogous to the chapters in a book, even more so to the increasing demand on expertise and comprehension that we have in learning an instrument or learning a language. It's like learning a language. Even those frivolous video games, the student is motivated to get from level 1 to level 2, which usually involves greater hand-eye coordination, greater understanding of strategy, greater understanding of plot, greater understanding of the attributes for the particular character. If you play video games, you'll notice they have health meters, they've got ammo meters, they've got power meters. These are very complex. And it will take days, weeks, if not months for a person to get through the levels of that game. Now, if they're willing to do that, why aren't they willing to do it with a traditional art form like music or foreign language or something like that? Because where's the reward? We've got to show them the palpable reward. You know, I'm one of those kids who fortunately grew up in an era where we kept saying, why is this relevant? Like, why is this relevant? And now I realize that if I could have taken 3D geometry and turned it around, I would have been better in geometry. I would have understood it more. Because we all learn at different levels. We all learn with different complexities. But what I'm saying is, we're not tapping into the willingness that a young person has to become a Jedi master in this game. You need to go back and say, what is the reward mechanism that makes them so cool? These kids that performed for us were so darn good that I could see them as intrinsic motivation to their siblings, to their peers. Well, the same thing is going on in the digital world.
A question here about the human interaction. Most of the folks here in the room there are from organizations where you've got an artist teaching either a student one-on-one in an individual lesson, or a small group of students, or a larger group in a classroom. But there's that direct human connection. So when technology is in between those things, how does that affect it? What's lost there, or is it lost?
As a professor for 4 decades in multiple disciplines, I would say that most teachers know one way to teach. And they demand that the student adhere, conform to that one way of teaching. You can't do that anymore. You simply cannot do that anymore. You have to be able to understand the value that you and the love that you have for your art form and convey it on many different levels. In other words, you must become multilingual. Multilingual meaning, why is this of relevance to you in terms of happiness? Why is this of relevance to you in terms of career? Is there a difference between avocation and vocation? The other thing is, what is your dream? I can tell you right now, even though I retired, I still teach. I teach at Arizona State University in their Arts, Media, and Engineering program. And you know what? I would say half the students have aspirations to succeed in disciplines, art forms that I am ignorant of. I mean, when I had a student last semester say, I want to become the best hand puppet person in the world. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, what? And you know what it was? Let's get online, let's go to YouTube, I'm going to show you what I mean. And it was an education for Don. And I suddenly saw, okay, cool. I've got Russian friends whose daughter wants to be a hip-hop artist. I'm like, this is surreal. You know, it got to the point towards the end of my tenure at the ETC where students would always pitch projects. And I would say to them, here's the new reality. If you pitch a project and I actually understand it, I'm not going to greenlight it. Because there's something wrong if I get it. I mean, I have a 26-year-old who spends most of her time letting me know how uncool I am. I said, so if you pitch a project to me and I look at you with a blank stare and have no idea what you're talking about, but you seem to be passionate about it as well as your peers, I'm probably going to greenlight it. Yeah, go ahead. Sure. I mean, I know you can make an anti-gravity machine in 15 weeks. I mean, why not?
a question.
I used to need pharmaceuticals to get into places like this. I'm beyond pharmaceuticals. The real world has taken over.
So here's a question. Has technology and immediate access to information ideas suppressed ability for critical thinking?
Yes, it has. But just like a prejudicial parent can create a narrow-minded young person. Remember the Greeks, the Oracle of Delphi? There were 2 rules when you went to the Oracle of Delphi. They were really simple rules. One was, know thyself. That's simple. And the other one, which was even more difficult, was all things in moderation. Excess of anything is not going to work. It will screw us up. All right? I have an excess of food. Okay? I know that. All right? I'm still trying to combat it. All right? But an excess of anything. So being able to get on Wikipedia and have somebody explain everything to you can, in fact, result in a blinder. It's our job to expose the other possibilities there. But that's what teaching's all about. That's what parenting is all about.
I want to just real quickly backtrack a little to that question before, which was about the human interaction and does technology get in the way? There's going to be a session tomorrow at lunch where Paul Babcock from McPhail Center for Music is going to talk about how that organization is using technology to extend what the music teachers are able to do in the studio, and how they're teaching via Skype, doing online music lessons and classes, and how actually the dynamic, the interaction between the teacher and the student has been enhanced because they're now looking the student directly in the eye rather than sitting next to them on a piano bench, for example. So it's interesting stuff. So Don, just a quick aside, but we're also going to be doing, Kylie Pepler's going to be here later today talking about making and the maker movement. But we have a question here about the makerspace movement and what is the connection between what's going on there at making fairs and arts education?
You should all be very excited by making things. Okay? The Maker Fair, all of that is very cool. I recently, in fact, 3 weeks ago, was the keynote speaker for the Themed Entertainment Association. These are the Disney Imagineers, the Universal folks, the people that make those wonderful worlds that you take your children to after they won the Super Bowl. All right? These are the folks. And they are promoting what I now call, and have been also promoting as the curriculum of the 21st century. And it's called SATE. And when I define SATE for you, you're going to feel really good. S stands for storytelling. Because once you take all this technology that these young people are enamored of and finally ascertain what's it for, it's for the telling of stories, the sharing of stories, and the story is basically encapsulating meaning. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Reality TV might disgust us, but it is an incredible experiment that young people are watching. And trust me, when my daughter watches Jersey Shore and sees her cousins, the cugini from Brooklyn on there, and looks at me and goes, Dad, they're really disgusting. Yes! Yes, they are. There's hope. There's hope. So, storytelling. You know what the A is? Architecture. But it doesn't mean architecture like let's build a house. It means structure. Because the cool thing about software is it's structure. And so understanding structure is at the heart of everything. It's at the heart of the arts. It's at the heart of science. I'll tell you the funny story when Randy took me to a DARPA conference. You know what DARPA is? The Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration. This is like the CIA of the DOD. And I was there for 3 days listening to, I didn't understand anything. And I was honestly having an existential crisis where I was thinking, maybe I made the wrong move. Maybe I should have stayed in the theater. When in the very last moment, the last session, the admiral in charge stands up and he goes, Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a very special guest with us here the last 3 days. He's a drama professor. Well, I got so excited. I started looking around the room going, I'm not the only mameluke here. I mean, there's a drama professor here. And then he goes, oh, and he was the associate head of drama at Carnegie Mellon. And I thought, oh my God, that's me. And he said, would Dr. Marinelli please come down front? So I come down front, I share the podium with this admiral, and the admiral says, Don, you're the only drama professor that we know of who's in a school of computer science. And you've been there for a couple of years now. What impact has this had on you? And it took me a millisecond, and I said, well, I feel right at home. Well, the murmuring in the audience was amazing. I mean, it was almost like, oh my God, this is worse than we thought. Man, look what we've done to it. We've ruined it. The degradation, the cognitive, he's lost it. And I thought, whoa. And I said, you know what? I just had an epiphany. I know more about what you do than you know what I do as a theater person. I said, I honestly believe that you think that those of us in the theater get up each morning, put on a toga, walk in the woods, and go, oh muses, strike me with inspiration. I said, we don't do that. I said, we're of the 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration group. I said, because let's think about this. You're a computer scientist. What is the fundamental basis of everything you do? It's an algorithm. Well, what is an algorithm? An algorithm is an if-then equation. If these variables are met, if these criteria are hit, then this will result. I said, well, let me show you what we do in the theater. If I'm directing a play, and I tell the actor to come in from up left, a very weak stage position, and I have the actor move center stage, much stronger. And I have the actor look out above the audience so that they think he's looking at some vision. And then I have the actor cross downright very quickly, a very strong stage position, put his hands together, and say these lines. If he does all of those things as we rehearse, and if the audience is who I think it is, then you should believe the butler did it. That's an if-then equation. What's the difference? You in the sciences are using math to build your algorithm. I'm using human psychology. So I'm not really building an algorithm, I'm building what we call a heuristic. A heuristic. This should be the case most of the time if I comprehend the story and the audience. I said, so we're really doing the exact same thing. That's architecture. What's the T? Technology. I talked about technology. It's the easiest of them all. Start with your phone. Start with your 500 channels at home. And what is the E? Experience. Experience. Let's go out and do things. Let's actually go outside. Let's go hug a tree. Let's go whitewater rafting. Immersion. What's the greatest example of immersion? Jump in a pool. It's called water all over you. You understand what immersion is. And I said to them, that isn't simply the attributes that you want for the Disney Imagineer of the future. That's the 21st century digital native. I mean, it has struck me how caring they are. I mean, to this day, if my daughter sees me with like a water bottle, I got hell to pay. I mean, it's like, you're ruining the environment. You're screwing it all up. And it's like, you're right. I'm just fat and lazy. But I'll buy carbon credits, okay? I mean...
John, that has to be the last word. Okay. For fat and lazy.
Please don't hold me to the carbon credit stuff, because I'm not sure that works.
But thank you.